Hello there. Well, the Christchurch Transport Plan, you may not have heard of it, but perhaps you should, or at least one city councillor says you should. It's a plan that's being devised by Christchurch City Council staff to fundamentally encourage you to change the way you go about your transport in this city. But Aaron Kewen says that you need to know more about this before the elections, the local body elections that is, so you know who you're voting for. And Aaron Kewen is with me now on this. Good evening to you, Aaron.
Evening, Chris. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Good to see you. Can you first of all outline what is this transport plan in the first place that we need to know about or should know about?
The transport plan is a plan the council's been putting together for some time on how they see the future of transport in Christchurch, how they would like to facilitate the way people get around in their transport needs. So that's heavy transport right down to individual personal transport.
Okay, so far so good. But what are the concerns you have and what's in this report that perhaps worries you?
Well, originally this report was meant to come out prior to the election, and it's now been bumped to after the election. And so the next council that comes in after October will be the ones that will roll this out. There's a number of things in there people should be really, really concerned about. My gut underlying feeling is that this is about telling people how you will travel, not facilitating the way people want to travel, which is a camp that I sit in. And there's the majority currently at the moment that are in the other camp. They want to dictate rather than facilitate. And I like to be evidence-based on our solutions around transport. And if you've got a lot of people wanting to do certain movements at certain times, how do we make that the most efficient possible? Because that's the best thing for the environment.
Also on this plan, I understand, or there has been discussion on congestion charges, even for Christchurch City.
Yeah, and a question I asked is, will the council get the biggest charge? Because the council currently creates congestion deliberately in certain areas to make people feel like they would rather catch the bus or bike because other forms of transport would be more efficient. To me, that's a complete false economy. You need to, you should never do that because you are deliberately increasing our carbon footprint to try and prove your point. And that's detrimental to the economy, detrimental to people's mental health and to the environment.
I know that when you talk about evidence-based, you have criticised other city councillors for wanting, say, bus priority lanes simply because when they have been created, there hasn't been an increase in patronage. Is that still the case? I mean, isn't latest data from ECAN suggesting patronage from the bus services have not actually increased in the last few years? What's the latest on that, Aaron?
Well, so the overall numbers are still down. We're still miles away from where we were pre-quake, and even then it wasn't great. And I just challenge people. I say, look, how often are you seeing a full bus? I remember back in the day catching buses and having to stand. The thing was always younger people stood up and you held the bar or the handle to allow older people or disabled people to sit down because buses were that full. They're not that full anymore. In fact, they're doubling the number of buses that are going on the roads, and that's increasing the carbon footprint, but they're not doubling the number of passengers. In fact, their own numbers suggest it will only increase by 40%, not 100%. So that's not good. There's 22 kilometres of bus lanes to come, which I disagree with. You don't put 2.5% of the population in one lane and everyone else in the other.
This transport plan, by the sounds of it though, Aaron, to be fair, doesn't sound like anything new because the council's been on this agenda to get people using public transport now for several years. In your view, what is new about this plan that has you worried that you want the public to know more about this before the local body elections?
Well, the problem is if you have a majority of council that believes in this plan and signs it off, they then have the ability to do any of the stuff in that plan that they want to do, which includes things like congestion charging, which is essentially a false economy. What are you paying for? It just makes no sense. And another one is parking charges, that they could go out to a business and say, we don't actually agree that you have this many staff drive to work, so we are going to charge you for the parking spaces that you own on your own land. And that's a world I thought I would never live in, especially in somewhere like Christchurch, which was designed and built after the invention of the motor car. And so essentially it is spread out, and we don't have density of population. We're 280 people per square kilometre. That's not the cities they aspire to be, have 4,000 people per square kilometre. You hear of Copenhagen and stuff all the time. And we're not those cities. They're thousands of years old that were built when people could only walk. So of course they have that density. We were birthed in a completely different environment.
In terms of this transport plan, is council by and large supportive of that? When I say council, I guess I mean councillors and staff?
Certainly at the moment, and that's why this should come out prior to the election, so the public of Christchurch can clearly see who votes for this and supports it. There is a working group at the moment. Phil Major and myself are on that group. There's been a number of things in this plan that we've disagreed with, but we are not the majority on that working group, and the majority are the ones who want to tell you how to live your life, and so they're getting a say. And my fear is that this will be put off to after the election. And if you don't have the right people around the table after October, this will be forced upon the people of Christchurch. And I've got no problem if that's what the people of Christchurch want. And so let's have it out before the election, and then people can vote for the dictators or the facilitators.
Interesting words. Christchurch City Councillor Aaron Kewen, nice to see you. Thanks so much for your time this evening.
Cheers, Chris. Have a great night.